Good evening, hello and welcome to this edition of Startup Central. I'm Nantara Rai. This is the only show of its kind on Indian television dedicated, of course, to startups, innovation, technology, disruption, entrepreneurship. Basically, if it falls under the gambit of the new economy, it's here every weekday at 6 p.m. on your favorite channel, ET Now. Ladies and gentlemen, like all the stakeholders from the startup community that we get on this show, Team Startup Central thrives on constructive criticism. We love hearing from you. We can't hear enough from you. So keep sending us those emails on how to take this show to the next level. What's missing, what we need to add, how we should be doing things differently. Our email address right on top, suc@etnow.tv. And speaking of disruption, what a massive disruptor we have in Coinbase. If you haven't heard of Coinbase, I think by now it's safe to say that you've been living under a rock. Coinbase has just had a bazooka, a blockbuster of a listing at the Nasdaq. It didn't go in through the lengthy IPO manner, but instead what we saw was the promoters selling their shares for a direct listing on the Nasdaq. And with that, Coinbase has entered the $100 billion valuation club. That's right, a jaw-dropping $100 billion. What does Coinbase do? Well, it is also the first listed crypto exchange platform of the Nasdaq. That's right, it's an exchange for all of you, for people to trade cryptos, Bitcoins, Ethereum, all of that. I'm going to be getting you a point of view all the way from Silicon Valley. Ray Wang from Constellation Research joining us live. Ray, thank you so much. I know you once again had to wake up super early to be a part of this live broadcast in India, but what an event it has turned out to be. Coinbase, you still have countries that are not legitimizing cryptocurrencies. They don't recognize cryptocurrencies. And look what's happened at the Nasdaq.
It is amazing. Coinbase actually is the Nasdaq of cryptocurrencies. This is where people go to actually exchange, and its direct to consumer model is really what's made it really successful. But hey, good evening. It's been incredible.
It really has been incredible. And you saw the kind of interest that was there for Coinbase when it listed on the Nasdaq. It's not one of those cases like what you saw with Deliveroo, for example, recently at the London Stock Exchange. But what is the larger message that we have from the Coinbase listing?
I think what's important to understand is that we are just at the beginning of this cryptocurrency revolution, and we now just legitimize the first cryptocurrency stock with a listing on the Nasdaq. This is really about a shift in terms of where digital currencies are headed. This is a shift in terms of how brokerages are being operated. As I mentioned earlier, Coinbase is basically a direct-to-consumer approach to access cryptocurrencies. It's basically eliminating the broker because a lot of brokers have not been allowed to provide cryptocurrencies that are out there. And I think if we take a look at the valuation, anywhere between 100 billion to 86 billion, depending how you look at it and where they will land today, this market cap is bigger than the Nasdaq, it's bigger than the New York Stock Exchange, and it's almost as big as Goldman Sachs, which is worth 111 billion. This is about the future potential of all the cryptocurrency that's being traded. Today, that's $2 trillion that could be out there that's being traded, and that could be $10 trillion in 5 years of all the cryptocurrencies out there.
But what's really also interesting, Ray, and we should talk about it, that, okay, cryptos live in another universe altogether, right? It's the Metaverse, which is trying to converge with the real universe, and the jury's out on how all of this is going to take place. But this is the first really important convergence that we have seen.
It is, and this is not a small trend. There are 56 million customers that are out there making transactions, and 2.8, making most of the transactions. But this isn't also a small number. This company was profitable when they went public. They delivered at 1.14 billion in profits in 2020, and they delivered 1.8 billion in profits in the last quarter. You can see that tremendous growth and the interest that's going on in cryptocurrency, especially as governments around the world have printed so much money. They've devalued their currencies, and people are looking at cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin as a haven from gold, as a haven from their currencies. And this is really why we've seen the rise of these currencies. And then, of course, we can't forget the NFTs that are out there. We're starting to digitize physical assets, and those are being traded as we look look at those new types of markets that are emerging.
India, we are awaiting legislation on what's going to be the future of cryptocurrencies. India is going to go ahead with its own digital rupee. Is going to be perhaps backed by the central banker here. But that's not how the Bitcoin works. That's not how many of the cryptos traded on Coinbase actually work. With what has happened with the Coinbase listing, as you yourself said, it's bigger than the exchange it's listing on the Nasdaq. What's the message to a lot of the countries that are still not sure on how they should be approaching this asset class?
Well, the reason a lot of countries are not sure about how to approach the asset class has to do with the fact that their currencies are at risk, especially in the US dollar. One could say that the US has been really behind on cryptocurrencies in terms of putting one out. And what's happened is really we've built around the dollar and around the valuations of the dollar. Now, there is a danger with these cryptocurrencies being issued. The country-backed cryptocurrencies aren't really going to mean that much. That's just another version of your currency, your fiat currency being issued. It's the currencies that are outside of government jurisdiction that are interesting, because in the case of Bitcoin, there's only 21 million Bitcoins that can ever be mined. And in that case, that actually creates the challenge as to, is this really a fixed asset versus something that can be printed easily to abandon? And that's really what people are looking for. They're looking for the idea that this is a fixed asset class, that there are not going to be any more Bitcoins printed in the future or created in the future. That fixed amount is what's driving the value.
Now, what's also, of course, happened is that the Coinbase founder and CEO, Brian Armstrong, has become one of the richest men on this planet post the listing, his net worth ballooning, not just with cryptos, but with actual dollars, right, with the listing of Coinbase. Can you tell us a bit about him? We in India, of course, have read how he was a former engineer at Airbnb. Have you been tracking his career?
Yeah, so one of the interesting things about Brian is that he's been a very understated guy, completely focused on trying to deliver on making Bitcoins accessible to everyone. He's tried to stay out of the political fray. He's been very careful about that. And, for him, it's really about making Bitcoin his passion. And, as you think about the legend behind this, right, I mean, this has all been really about, taking the vision of Satoshi Nakamoto, which is legendary, the founder of Bitcoin, and putting his vision into work and making it easier to access. When we think about Bitcoins in the early days, you would have this large encryption key. That's how you would access it. It was very hard to trade. It was very hard to share with anybody. It was kind of like an experiment. And what he's done is democratize access to that the everyday person actually could get into it. But this is really his passion, really, to bring this to work. And, if there's anything about him, he's been relentless about making this happen. And of course, he's been very understated, unlike other Silicon Valley CEOs that have been out there, maybe too flamboyant and maybe not a lot of substance. He's actually delivered on both the substance, the technology, and a profitable company.
Now, what's also perhaps happened with the Coinbase listing, Ray, and we should talk about this. Brian Armstrong, very dedicated, very understated, not flamboyant like your regular Silicon Valley CEOs, but he's now one of the richest men on this planet. A lot of the founding employees or all of those at Coinbase would have become millionaires overnight. And again, with regular dollar currency, not just the Bitcoins that they own. Fungible asset class is the point I'm getting at.
It is, yes. They're going to be rich in dollar terms. And the question is, as soon as they're rich in dollar terms, this is really the point people make. Well, you start to lose your valuation. If you're not making 10 to 12% return in the marketplace on your dollar is already being devalued, given how much money has been printed by the US government and how much more is about to be printed by the US government. In fact, they would probably have been preferred to be paid out in Bitcoin. I think they would have been happier. But in the other case, I'm sure they're very, very happy.
Final comments, Ray, before I let you go and start your day in San Francisco. Coinbase is the world's largest crypto exchange, 56 million users worldwide, total volumes traded over $300 billion. These are astronomical figures that we're talking about. Is this the only crypto exchange in the world worthy of talking about? Because I'm sure after Coinbase, there will be a lot of crypto-centric businesses that would look at a direct listing.
Yeah, it's a great point. Coinbase is the largest one in the US. Binance is the other cryptocurrency exchange that people will be looking at going forward. But more importantly here is to understand that Coinbase is one of the digital giants. And these digital giants have a few factors: large networks, in this case, the 56 million, customer control. What they've done is disintermediate the customer account control from traditional brokerages, data supremacy, what they're trading on and what they're understanding. That information and insight powers their future ability. And the digital monetization that's coming from transaction fees is one part of the equation. They're going to build more going forward. And then here's the last piece. It's the growth mindset. That is a pattern you're going to see in companies that emerge and win in this digital world. These new digital giants all have these 5 factors. And of course, it's something I've been writing about.
Ray, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for being part of our live broadcast today.
Take care. Have a wonderful weekend.
Right, so that's Coinbase entering the $100 billion valuation. It is now bigger, as you just heard, than Goldman Sachs. It's bigger than the exchange it has listed on, which is the Nasdaq. While we were talking about it, in India, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has been saying how there will be a legislation for a digital rupee. We still don't know whether there will be an outright ban on cryptos. The Secretary of the Ministry of Corporate Affairs has also issued an order that companies that own cryptos will need to start declaring them. Which way is India headed? And what does the Coinbase IPO mean for all of those that wanted to participate in the listing? Can they participate in the listing? That conversation I'm going to be having on the other side with the co-founder of StartUpCentral, which allows Indians to invest in US equities. And the second guest on the other side, the founder of a homegrown crypto exchange, CoinDCX. That's coming up on the other side. Stay tuned.